Hello everyone, I'm Kapil Batra. I'm a Salesforce MVP and a Salesforce developer by heart. And I'm also a content creator on my YouTube channel, which is salesforcepole.com. And apart from that, I'm running a blog as well. Okay. So guys, in today's workshop, topic will be the component lifecycle and composition. So we will learn about the lifecycle, how a component starts until we, delete it or okay. So let me share my screen quickly. Just give me a second. Just a second. All right, guys. Uh, so let's start today's session. So first of all, I would like to say thanks to Kathy and Women in Tech Group Kolkata for giving me this opportunity to share the knowledge with us. So in today's session, guys, we will be covering the component life cycle and the composition. By life cycle, I mean the cycle when the component start and when it reach to its end. Okay, so what happened between them, how it all starts. So we'll be discussing these things in this presentation. Okay, so first of all, guys, I would like to invite you to go social with me and Salesforce Board. So if you're not already following us, then you may join us on Twitter. I'm very much active over Instagram and Twitter. LinkedIn, on YouTube. I'm having the YouTube channel, which is Salesforce Bold, and the blog name is salesforcepole.com. So, like, let's say if you're following my videos, and if in any case the complete code of one of the examples shared in my videos, you can just directly go to my blog, search for that specific, get the complete code there. Okay, okay. So let's move on. Okay. So guys, the agenda will be to understand the Lightning Web Component lifecycle hooks and the thing like where you can use them, why you should use them, okay, and what are the benefits of using the lifecycle hooks. So in lifecycle hooks, guys, I hope everyone must be aware about it because like we are using them from the beginning, even though in Apex, JavaScript, in any language, we are using constructors. Then having connected callback, after that disconnected callback, rendered callback, and error callback. And we will learn more about it in upcoming slides. Okay. Now, guys, the thing is where you can use it. Okay. So this is just a basic introduction where you can use it. I will explain it in detail as well, and definitely I will be giving you an example as well where you can see the uh, life cycle of these components. Okay, so first the constructor fires when a component instance is created. Okay, so guys, at this point is very important. It fires when a component instance is created. The component is not loaded yet, we have just created the instance of that component. Okay, so in that the constructor will fire. Then connected callback, it fires when a component is inserted into DOM. Okay, then disconnected callback, it is just kind of vice versa of this connected callback. So it fires basically when a component is removed from the DOM. Okay, now rendered callback, it fires when a component is rendered on the DOM. And error callback, fire in case during lifecycle hook or event. So let's say if during the lifecycle, if you are having any error, then you can catch those error in this error callback. Okay. Now, guys, in all of them, you must be noticing this DOM. So in my last presentation, I have noticed like not many of you are aware like what is a DOM. So let me just give you a basic introduction about DOM itself. So guys, the full form of the DOM is basically document object model. So whenever a web page is loaded, the browser create a document object model for that page. Okay. The HTML DOM model is constructed as a tree of object. So basically it is going to create a node system where will be creating a structure to show a web page. Like in a structure, like it can have like on the top we should have root element, like the HTML tag should be on the top. After that we can have head, we can have body, then maybe we can have some other tags as well, and then we can have some custom CSS there as well. And now then inside that we can have our text and images. Okay, so this is basically what is the document object model, or I would say DOM. Okay, now guys, this is the lifecycle flow for a lightning web component. Okay, so if you will notice here, it will call the constructor, sorry, and the constructor will be called on the parent component first. So let's say if you are having parent child relationship, in this example the example is for single parent and single child. Okay, so if we talk about the parent child relationship, so this constructor will be called on the parent first. After that, the properties, the public properties will be initialized or will be updated. Okay, after that, the parent will be inserted to the DOM. Okay, in the document object model, we will insert the parent into the DOM. And after that, the connected callback will be called on parent. Okay, so first of all, our constructor will work. Then after that, later on, once the parent is inserted into DOM, the connected callback will game in action and it will work. Okay, then after see the parent component. After this connected callback, the parent will be rendered on the screen. So for this connected callback, if you comes from an Aura background, then you can compare it with the init method in the Aura. Like init method in Aura basically works like the onload event of that Aura component. Okay. Now from the child component, these are the child size. Okay. So we will be following the same process. The constructor will be called on child. Public properties will be updated, child inserted to DOM, then we'll be having the connected callback in action again. Then the child component will render. Okay. Then after that, at the end, the render callback will be called on the child component first. So that render callback basically works child to parent. So if you are having child component in your Lightning Web component, so the render callback will first trigger on the child component, then it will go a level up. By level up, I mean to the parent component. If you are having a grandparent component, then render callback will be triggered on the child, then it will go level up to the parent, then it will go another level up to the grandparent one. Okay. Okay, guys, so this was the basic structure, like what is the life cycle flow of a Lightning Web component. Now let's dig a little deep in it and see the capabilities, like what are the pros of using these. So let's start with the constructor. So guys, the constructor method fires when a component instance is created. Okay, and in constructor, guys, you cannot add attributes. You should not add attributes in the constructor. The first statement should be super statement. So guys, using the super statement, basically you can inherit the functions from the parent. Okay, so that's why it is very, very important to the first statement should be the super statement with no parameter. Okay, so basically this call establish the correct prototype chain and value for this. Okay, by this I mean the this keyword which we are using in Lightning Web component to access the parameters. So using the super keyword, basically we will be creating a chain between the components, like there could be grandparent, parent, and child. So in three of them, if you are having constructor, then we have to use the super keyword at the first. Okay, and the constructor will be called from parent to child. Okay, so it will always goes from parent to child. First, the parent component constructor will call itself. Then you will be having the child component. Okay, and in constructor, you cannot do inspect element because the elements does not exist yet. So in HTML page, you must be able to do like right click and inspect to check the DOM elements of it. But if you will try to do it on constructor, you won't be able to do it on constructor because the elements, the attributes does not exist yet. And even though the properties also are not available yet. Okay. So the flow of the constructor is a flow from parent to child. It means if there are child component in LWC, then first the parent constructor, and let's say if we are having grandparent component in LWC, then first the constructor will be the grandparent one, then it goes to the parent, then it followed by the child constructor. Okay. Now let's move to the next one, which is connected callback and disconnected callback. So guys, these two are very important functions here, I would say. Like for connected callback, as I have mentioned earlier as well, like you can compare it with the init function in the Lightning Aura component. So in Lightning Aura component, you must have used the init function to, let's say, as an initialization of that component. So let's say if you would like to get a list on the load of that component, then you can use it in init. So same way in the Lightning web component, if you need to get a list on the load of a component, then you can use this connected callback. Okay. So guys, these both lifecycle hooks flows from parent to child. Okay. So first, like the constructor, first it will, and then later on it will be followed by the child component as well. Okay. And the same way, you cannot access the child element from the callbacks because they don't exist yet. Okay. To access the host element, use this. To access element in components template, you can use this dot template. You can use here. Okay. And you can use connected callback to interact with a component environment. For example, like I have, for example, you can just get the list of record on the load of the component, or perform some initialization task like initialize a list or maybe initialize an object, or you can fetch the data, set up cache, set up cookies. Okay. And the same way the disconnected callback works completely vice versa of the connected callback. So disconnected callback can be used to undo the changes what we did on the connected callback. So let's say if you have created a cached memory on connected callback, then on disconnected callback, you can empty that cache data because you don't want to, load the cache data on your browser. So it is very important, like if you're having any cache data or anything that needs to be deleted from the component when component gets out of that page. So for that, you have to use the disconnected callback, and you can also use the disconnected to remove event listener. Okay, so guys, if you used event listener, so we have to trigger the event listener on the load of the page, and then later on when the component gets out of that page, you can delete that event listener as well. So these are basically used of that connected callback and disconnected callback. In also, I'm assuming like you must have used this connected callback at least, because like this is very basic thing. Okay, so the next is the disconnected callback life cycle. So how disconnected callback works, that is explained in this chart here. So once the parent is removed from the DOM, the document object model, so once the parent is removed from the DOM, then it will call the disconnected callback. Okay, and the flow will be the same, the parent to child. So first the disconnected callback will be called on parent. Then after that, the child will be removed from the DOM, and then the disconnected callback will be called on the child itself. So that's how connected callback and disconnected callback and constructor also is working in parent to child flow. Okay, let's move to the next one. Okay, the next one is rendered callback. So basically, as I think it is very much explained by its name also, rendered callback. So it will basically call back when the component gets rendered on a page. So it is quite simple, I think. So you can use it to perform logic after a component has finished the rendering phase. Okay, and this hook flows from child to parent. Like first it will be triggered on the child component, then it will be followed by the parent. So let's say if I talk about the previous example, which was grandparent, parent, and child. So if we talk about the rendered callback, then first the child component will be having the rendered callback. After that, it will go to the parent one, and after that, it will go to the grandparent one. So this rendered callback functions flow is from child to parent. Okay, and guys, always remember a component can be rendered multiple times during a lifespan of an application. Okay, so to use this hook to perform a one-time operation, you can use a Boolean field like has rendered or is rendered, and you can just make it true, just to stop it to render again and again. This is the same way like we are already using in triggers while creating a trigger. So if we are having a recursion and trigger, so to stop that recursion, we can take a Boolean variable and we can check for that Boolean variable, like if this trigger has been triggered already. Okay, so if that trigger has been triggered already, then we don't have to run that again. So the same way in render callback also, you can just keep a Boolean variable to make sure if you would like to run it only once. Okay. Okay. So the next is error callback. So this will basically hit a callback in case of any error. So in this lifecycle hooks, if you will having any error during the lifecycle events, so basically you can have them in this error callback. Okay, so it will basically capture lifecycle hooks or during an event handle declared in an HTML. All right, okay. So this is basically a component diagram where you can see the root component, child component, parent, and as you can see, there are multiple kinds. So this is basically an example of the grandparent component. So this root could be a grandparent. This is a parent. This is child of that root component. This is a subchild from the child one. Okay. And this is another subchild from the child one. So guys, this is basically an example of that component life cycle, like how it flows from the top to bottom or bottom to top. Okay. So guys, let's using an example because like these were just only the theory part. So let me just explain it to you using an example. Okay. So we'll be creating an example of life cycle hooks. So first of all, we'll be having an example in which we will create a grandparent component, parent component, and child component. Okay, and we will trigger constructor, uh, connected callback, and render callback. We'll be triggering these three functions in it, and I will show you the flow of the life cycle, how it goes from parent to child or child to parent. Okay, and later on we can also compare it with the previous image, like what we have seen on the previous image, the flow of the life cycle hooks. So we can also compare it with them. Okay, so let me just open my VS Code. Just give me a second. All right, guys. So this is my Visual Studio Code basically. So let me just create a new component quickly. And let's create the grandparent component first. Okay. This is our grandparent component, guys. And in this, first let's expose it to the page and also. Guys, we'll be importing only this grandparent component. We'll be exposing because the parent and the child will be a child of this grandparent one, so we don't have to expose the child components. Okay, so let me close it and where it is. Okay, so let's start with the constructor. So to declare constructor, you can just type constructor and make sure to add the super keyword here. Okay. Let's have a log here. Of grandparent. Now let's create a connected callback, which can be used basically as an initialization of a component. Okay, and here also we can have a log. Okay, let's have render callback. So guys, from the constructor and the connected callback, you'll be able to see the flow from parent to child. And from the rendered callback, you'll be able to see the flow from child to parent. Okay, taking this render callback as well. Okay. And this is the render callback. Okay. Let's go to the HTML part and let's create a SLDX box first. Okay, let's use this one, or maybe we can have a different theme in each component also. Okay, so let's keep it different. So in grandparent one, we'll be using this textured. Let's take this div from here and okay. Okay, that should be fine. Okay. So the grandparent component is ready. Now the same way we'll be creating a parent and a child component as well. Okay. So I will just copy this data because we have to use the same in the parent one as well. So let's create lightning web component, parent. So this is the parent one. Let's update the text here. On the HTML also, we can update the text like this. Here it is. Okay. I'm grandparent, parent component, and let's change the theme of it. Let's keep the default theme here. Great. And using the same, we will be creating a child component as well. So let's just copy this again. Control Shift P, create component, child. Okay. Okay, so I have created a child component as well, and let's add the body of it. Child, and let's keep the theme as default maybe here. So let's copy this and paste it. Okay. Hopefully we won't be having any error here, any syntax issue or something. Okay, so it is deployed successfully, guys, but we have not added it to its parent yet. Okay, so first we'll be adding the parent component to this grandparent one. So let's go to HTML and let's give a line break here. Okay, now we will have the component parent. Okay. Now let's go to, and here also we will give a line break. Child, okay. All right, it is getting deployed. So guys, basically what we have done here is we have created a composition between the components. So we are having three components here: grandparent, parent, and child. Grandparent is having the parent component as a child, and the parent component is having child component as a child. Okay, so this is basically a two level hierarchy, I would say, where we are having parent and grandparent about the child. Okay, so it is deployed successfully. Now let me just open my default app. All right. So let me just open the application. Okay, let's edit the page and add the component. This was just a sample component I was trying just to test the example of the life cycle. Now we will add the component which we have created right now. This grandparent. Okay, save it. All right, guys. So here you can see the three components: the grandparent at the top, parent component, and the child one. Now what is happening here? Let me show you the console logs here. So guys, these are the consoles for these three components. So first of all, the constructor will go from parent to child. That's why the constructor has been called from grandparent. Okay. Then the connected callback will be from parent to child. Then connected callback will be called for grandparent. Okay. Now the constructor for the parent and connected callback for the parent as well. Then the constructor of the child and connected callback of the child will be called. Okay. And at the end, we have called the render callback. And as I have mentioned earlier, also like render callback flows from child to parent. Okay. So that's why the render callback will be having for the child component first. You can see the render callback of child first. Then later on, you are having render callback of parent. And at the end, you are having the render callback of grandparent. So guys, this is basically the same thing which I have shown you in this image, this one. First of all, we'll be calling the constructor. Okay. Then the components are getting inserted into the DOM. This is all just backend part. And after that, you may notice the connected callback. Okay. Then the parent render, and at the we will be having the render callback as it goes from child one. Let me get back to that slide. Here it is. So guys, this was an example of the life cycle between the grandparent, parent, and child. Okay. Now let's talk about a different scenario. What if we are having grandparent, parent, and multiple child? So it's going to be like constructor of grandparent, connected callback, then parent, then child one, then child two, or both are going to run simultaneously? Is it going to be, if we talk about the reverse flow, is it going to be render callback for child 2 first, then render callback for child 1, then for parent or grandparent, or is it going to be run simultaneously for both of the childs? Okay, so to implement this example, we have to create another component here. Okay, so let's create another component quickly. Let's name it name another child. Okay, and let's copy the JavaScript part first. Okay, we have updated it. Now let's copy the HTML part as well. Okay, and we are just keeping the default theme here as well. And let me update the text. So, second child component. Okay, this looks fine. This is also fine. Okay, now let's go to parent, and here we'll be adding that another child. So component, another child, closing brackets, and we are good to go. Okay, it is getting deployed now. So in this case, we are still having the same scenario, the two-level architecture like grandparent, parent, and child, but this time we are having more than one child. So it is just an example to show you like how the life cycle hooks are going to flow between multiple childs. Okay, now let's go to the example screen. Okay, you can see the child here. Now let me give you a walkthrough to the consoles. So constructor of grandparent, this will be pretty same. Then connected callback, constructor of parent, connected callback, constructor of child, this is the first one. Then connected child, okay, this is for connected callback for first one. Okay, then we can see the rendered callback. Okay, as rendered callback flows from child to parent, it does not matter how many childs you are having in your parent component, render callback will always trigger based on, I mean, after each component. Okay, so let's say if you're having 5 childs, so for 5 of them, you will be having this render callback after the connected callback of that component. So, so as you can see, this is for first child only. Then we are having constructor of second child, connected callback of second child, and then we can see the rendered callback of the second child. Okay, so for now, like the render callback will be triggered based on the, I would say, sequence you have implemented the child components here. Okay, but it will be specifically separate for each component, and it will trigger once the component, once each rendered on the screen. Okay, then after that you may notice the same flow, which is parent, and at the end grandparent. So guys, these were your lightning life cycle flows. Okay, I hope I was able to make you understand like how you can go through these life cycle hooks and where you can use it basically. Okay, so that comes to the end of this presentation. Thank you. Let me know if you have any queries. Over to you, Kathy. Kathy, you here? Okay, maybe I don't see Kathy here, so maybe she just lost the internet connectivity. Okay, now let me just go through the Q&A. So there are, the diagram is not clear. Could you please maximize? Sorry, actually, I didn't check this in between the session. Otherwise, I would have maximized it. But let me tell you where you can find it. Okay. So if you will search for Lightning Web Component Lifecycle hooks, wait a second. Let me just search for that specific link so that I can share it with you. Okay, so for the lifecycle flows, we are having a specific link on the developer.salesforce.com. Let me share my screen quickly. So this is basically the lifecycle flow. I have taken this from this official website. Okay, so I will just do one thing. I will just share the link in the chat. And guys, this is really very important thing. You can just keep it in your cell phone or maybe in your work. So whenever if you need help in in understanding the life cycle flows, then you can just look to this diagram and this will give you a perfect idea like how it is going to be in the component life cycle. Okay. So I have shared in the chat. So you can just check out there. Okay. Where to set values to variable, constructor connected or render callback. So it depends. You should not variable to constructor. Okay. You can set values to variable once a component is initialized, and by initialize I mean in the connected callback itself. Okay, because connected callback basically works like when a component gets initialized. So you can set the parameters, default values, load the list, and all these things you can connected callback. You can also have it in the rendered callback, but as I have mentioned, like the render callback will be calling it multiple times because a component state can be rendered multiple times during a life cycle. Okay, so it is send a flow from parent to child, then you have to declare it in connected callback. But maybe in any case, if you need it to run from parent, then in that case you can do it in render callback. But in render callback, also make sure you can have a boolean variable just to make sure like that trigger only once. Okay. Now next is, can you please take an example for disconnected callback to Sakshi Gupta? Sorry, Sakshi, I'm not example in my code right now, but you can trigger make it like it. Let's say if you are having a list of components in which you are just rendering child components, so it is, you can understand it like a loop of child components. And let's say if you are having a delete button to delete that specific row, which is a definitely a lightning web component on the back end. So whenever you will remove that component from the DOM, it will trigger the disconnected callback. Okay, now how does uh, render works in LWC? So by render, if you mean the rendered callback, then I have already explained it to you. And if you're looking for that specific render function, so let me just explain it that as well, as that was not mentioned in this official document. So guys, using the renderer, basically you can override the render functionality. So in any case, if you would like to override the functionality, so you can just use the render instead of. What can be the scenario where the rendered callback is called multiple times? So let's say if you are having child component and maybe you have to refresh the component to see the latest result. Okay, so basically we are just refreshing the component, or maybe you are wiring some data and using the refresh apex there in the component. So in that case also the component can use the render callback multiple times. And to stop that, you can always use a Boolean parameter. So it will make sure like that component should run only once. Okay. These were the questions in the chat, Khyati.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kapil. I just lost my connection at that moment. So
No
sorry for that.
problem.
Thank you for taking up the questions. Thank you for such an insightful session as well. Thank you everyone for joining us